folks, Gene Galin with the Chatham Journal, and I've got Miss Michele Morrow. You're running for state, what's the proper title?
The Superintendent of Public Instruction.
Superintendent of
It's
Public Instruction. Now, you beat out Catherine Truitt to be in this position, didn't you?
Yes, I did in the primary.
All right. I got to ask you this question. How'd you do it? Because there were a lot of people that were going, hey, Catherine's, she's the incumbent, and you're coming along here, and you just...
I think that education is an issue that crosses all race, religion, and politics. I think people are very concerned that our children are not getting the sound basic education that they need in order to pursue careers that are going to be not only financially lucrative for them, but also personally rewarding. And I think we need somebody from outside to look and see what can we do differently to ensure that our kids are prepared to compete on the global marketplace.
Now, I know you've been asked this question probably 1,000 times, but what prompted you to? I mean, it's not easy running for public office. So what made you say, Michele, I got to run for this position?
I've really been engaged for the last 5 years with what's happening in our schools. I have 5 kids, and they've been in public, private, and homeschooled, so I feel like I actually have a good idea of what's worked in all 3 of those realms and maybe what doesn't. And I've been talking to legislators. We've been trying to get change done at our local school board and school boards around North Carolina, and I just realized, you know what? This is a problem that's coming from the top down, and so I think we need to deal with it from the top down.
What was one of the problems you ran into the school board that you felt needed to be handled?
I think that we are spending our time, our taxpayer money, and too much classroom time on political agendas and things that are not the basis of education, so children can learn critical thinking skills, and they can learn how to reason, and they can learn how to even deal with conflict. I think we are really putting things on our children when they're young that are topics that they're not ready to handle, and we have a very severe literacy crisis. The more money that we're spending, actually, we can look, and there's a direct link to the more money we've spent, the lower our literacy rates are across the board in math and in reading.
Okay, so if you've got all this money that's being spent inappropriately, where would you channel that money? What direction would you channel that money to make things better?
Channel it first and foremost to the classroom. That's where all of the spending should start, and everything else is just an extra. As an emergency room nurse, I've been a nurse for 31 years, and I worked in the emergency room, and there's something called triage. And when someone comes in, you look and determine if they have something that is a life-threatening injury, and you deal with that first. And I feel like we are at a crisis point in our educational system. We've got to look at what is the life-saving measures, and that is reading, writing, and math in elementary school. That is where our focus needs to be. And we need to look at what programs have we been doing maybe for 20 or 30 years. They all started with a good intention, but if you cannot prove statistically that any program or any spending or any time in the classroom that we're asking our teachers to spend is helping our children academically, in career development, or in character development, then it needs to be cut. We need to get back to the basics.
So in your triage situation, you mentioned those 3 factors, the ones that are most important to you.
Well, I'll say safety and academic excellence, and also career preparedness. I've traveled to I've visited a lot of different CTE programs in North Carolina, and also one that's excellent that's right over the border in South Carolina.
When you say CTE, that's the acronym. For someone who doesn't know what CTE is, what is CTE?
It's career and technical education.
Okay.
And so what that is allowing kids to do something that's beyond the book work, right? So when you're thinking of the kids that do dual enrollment in most of our districts have that option. Some of them have a lot more opportunities. I'd like to expand that CTE program so that we can partner with businesses throughout North Carolina so that the businesses can actually be training their future workers in high school, so that kids that maybe they're not all about, reading and high-level math, but they can solve problems, and they maybe want to be a mechanic. They want to do something, in police work. They want to be cosmetologists. They want to do nursing. There's all of these different avenues that you can actually get certificates from and end up getting out of high school and having a career for yourself, that you can provide for yourself and even raise a family and stay in the town that you were raised.
I was going to say, you sound like a Mike Rowe type of fan.
Actually, I've reached out. If you know Mike Rowe, I've reached out to him.
Oh yeah, me and Mike are like
yeah. Because I would really love for for North Carolina to be a pilot program. You know, the amount of rural districts that we have percentage-wise in North Carolina, we are second only to Texas. And so we know that I would love for students to be able to live and work and raise a family in the rural communities where they were born and raised, right? Because everybody's kind of moving to the cities, and I would love to see how can we bring businesses into our more rural areas and kind of, you know, just bring that economy back up for some of these areas, especially if you travel North Carolina. A lot of these wonderfully quaint towns that were like built right on the railroad, and they're amazing towns, but so many of them, the businesses are shuttered. And so even for young people, what opportunities do they have even in high school to be getting part-time jobs, to figure out what they might want to do, right? Education should be about the basics of education, learning how to read, write, do math, express yourself, solve problems, and then figure out, what do you love? What are you good at? And that's what we should be doing toward middle school and high school, giving everybody a pathway toward being an independent adult.
So you're not just looking at, hey, college, you either go college or you don't do college. You're looking at, hey, there's other alternatives to pathways to success.
Absolutely, because right now I think it's Mike Rowe that says there's 2 million jobs in trades in this, you know, technical training that are up for grabs.
And
there's nobody to fill
overseas.
them. That's right. And to that point, at one point we were the world superpower, but in order to be that, and in order to be inventive, and in order to be the entrepreneurs, and in order to be leading the rest of the world, we need our children to be the next generation to take that baton and to use those ideas and those skills to make us strong again and prosperous as a nation.
Here in Chatham County, they did a teacher survey, and they had the survey asked teachers what some of their concerns are, and I think you touched on a couple of them. Number one was salary, and number two was discipline.
Yes.
The lack of support that a lot of teachers feel when it comes to discipline and handling problems in the classroom. What's your approach to, because I think you're looking at it as it's not just a teacher-school situation, it's also a parent situation.
Absolutely. The way that our children and our students are going to excel and reach their fullest potential is when the teachers and the families are working together to that end. And what I see is we need to make every school be more like a team situation, right? Like, let's look at a football team. You got the head coach, you got all the different, you know, assistant coaches, and then you have the players. And that's what every school should be. So when everyone is doing their job well, we all win as a team, right? At the end, everybody is successful. It's going to look different because people have different abilities, but I think the administrator's number one job inside of a school is making sure that the teachers have the resources they need to help every student reach their greatest potential. And when there is something that's happening, there is a lot of discipline issues. And what I'm hearing from teachers across the entire state, and much of the reason why they're leaving, is they don't have the time to teach and they don't have the backing. If you have 1 or 2 students that are impeding the learning of other students, and that you send them to the principal's office and they only get a snack and they get to play on an iPad and they come back, that is not helping that child, right? And it's also not helping the rest of the class. So what we need the administrators to do is give them the resources, give them the time, but also be the go-between with issues with parents. They need to have the back of the teachers, and they need to be the ones that are the mediators to bring the parents and teachers together and say, how can we best help this student to reach their fullest potential? How can we make our classrooms be places that everyone wants to arrive in the morning? That's what we need to do in our schools. That's what it used to be 30 years ago. We don't have to recreate the wheel, but we need a code of conduct. We need an understanding of what is expected of our students and our teachers and our parents. And I think that's why our private schools are actually doing so well. That's why people want to be in, that's why people want to teach in the private school. It's less money in a private school, but they have the backing of the administration. Those parents understand what the consequence will be if their child doesn't do their schoolwork, if they don't show up for school, right? Or if they're getting licked or they're not able to participate in a healthy way.
That's done on a local private school type of level. What would you, if you're elected, what can you do in your position to get that out into into the schools in the 100 counties here in
Right. Well, I think what we need to do is we need to look at a potential code of conduct that could then be adopted by the individual school boards, and let the people of North Carolina know, we're offering this. Would you like it? Let your school board know if you want this to be the case, right? Because school boards have a lot of autonomy. And so, in my opinion, it should not depend what zip code you live in as to what quality of education you are getting. That is not fair, and it's not upholding our constitutional promise to offer every child a sound basic education in North Carolina. So that's what we need to do. And if school boards are not willing to do that and willing to address that, then that comes to the people, right? And it also comes to funding, right? What does the superintendent do? The General Assembly is the one that determines which districts get which money, right, in terms of, you know, state funding, and that's the majority of spending for schools. But it's the DPI that hands them the check, right? So if there is not an agreement, if you are not doing what is expected by the laws of the General Assembly, and that's the other thing, this is an advocacy role. So I will be going to the General Assembly and saying, listen, it sounds like the people of North Carolina need X, Y, and Z, and in order to ensure that this is going to be the same state education that you're getting across the board, right, that it's a quality, doesn't matter where you live, your kids are going to be safe, they're going to be focused on academics, and they're going to be prepared to pursue whatever their dream is at the end of K through 12. Sometimes you have to put in the safeguards and the consequences, and everybody understands up front, right, what's going to happen. So you're not saying, oh, you teacher are just against my child because you don't like me as the parent, or because you're this or you're that. If everybody knows when you're walking into that school in August, this is what's expected, kids going to sign it, parents are going to sign it, teachers and the admin are going to sign it. This is what happens when you don't show up. This is what happens when you don't turn in your work. This is what happens, right, when you're not being respectful to your classmates or to your teacher. This is across the board. That's what justice is. It's blind and it's balanced.
We were talking about, you mentioned funding. What's your take on the scholarships that are offered to students to go to various schools? And you can keep talking, I just need to make sure.
Yes, well, I'm 100% in favor that our parents should have a choice. I think there's going to be a little bit of difficulty when we're giving that money to private schools. I'm not sure how this is going. I haven't talked to legislators about this, but because charter and public and traditional public schools fall under the DPI, I can understand that funding going to either one of those, right? Because then you can keep them on a level playing field of expectation and, you know, and accountability. But with the private schools, I'm not really sure how we're going to go about you maintain being a private school, so you're not really under the directorship, so to speak, of the General Assembly, and yet you're taking state money. So I've got to talk with the General Assembly and see how that's going to work out.
So for you, it's still a work in progress.
Well, I will say, I do think that because we have been failing to provide a quality education to our students, we are not getting our money's worth as taxpayers in North Carolina. When we had only 25% of our 8th graders last year were competent on a national level in reading, math, or science, we're not getting our money's worth. So I can understand why parents are saying, listen, I can't afford in this economy to go and dole out $12,000 per child to go to a private school. What am I going to do? And if there isn't a charter school, right, in the area, because there are 37 districts that don't have a charter school, or if they're capped. That's the other thing that we're realizing. And there's many private schools have a 2 to 3 year wait list right now. So what's going to happen when now you have money in your pocket, but we aren't magically, multiplying all of these charter or private schools? So I think for right now, it is wise for us to give the money to the students to be able to say, whatever you can do right now to figure out how your child is not going to fall farther behind, or so that, because it's probably going to take 4 or 5 years until we have enough other options, right, to fill the demand. Well, we've already lost 4 years, essentially, of our kids learning. You're talking now 8 years when kids are really only in academically rigorous classes for 12, right? That's an entire generation of students, and we cannot afford that here in North Carolina. So I say, as I said in my talk before, healthy competition breeds the best product at the best price. And I think when we have healthy competition, if you have 3 great schooling options, 4 great schooling options, and you're able to say, I want my money to go to this one because that's what's going to meet my children's needs best, I think it makes everybody better. I think public schools should be the absolute best option. That's where we've been spending our money. That's what the Constitution states. And I think that's why I want to do this. It's not going to be for everybody, right? But it should be an absolutely stellar option so that people aren't having to make a decision because of failure. They're making a decision based on what their child's needs or gifting or interests are, right? And so it's much more individualized rather than out of desperation.
You beat Catherine in the primary. You're up against the Democratic candidate. What are your differences? What do you see as, hey, here's what I want to do and here's what my opponent wants to do?
Well, my opponent has stated that now he is proudly being supported by Planned Parenthood as well as by Equity NC. He has stated repeatedly that what needs to be done is we need to just celebrate what is great and fully fund the school system. We disagree pretty vehemently on those points because yes, we should absolutely celebrate greatness, but I disagree that just putting more money into a system when it's being mismanaged is going to help our children to academically be successful. And that's the difference. He is of the system and I am outside the system. He has a vested interest in doing what the system tells him to do and protecting, you know, we've always done it this way, right? And I have an interest in saying we need to look at this through a very clear lens and say this is not about casting judgment on one side or another. This is about this isn't working, right? Why don't we go back to when there was a 2 or 3 year wait list for teachers to get a job in North Carolina? Right now, we're almost 5,000 teachers short, right? Why don't we go back to when our literacy rates and our testing rates and our scores and our level of academic performance in North Carolina was rising in the ranks rather than now it's dropping, right? And that is the difference. He believes that the system is working well and that we don't need parental involvement. Trust the people that have been doing it. And I'm saying no. The schools serve the families of North Carolina, and we need to engage those parents, but we also need to recognize that children belong to their parents, and the parents have the ultimate responsibility and the ultimate role of training up their kids, and we are there to help them academically. And so I'm 100% of the belief that we need to get in there. We need to do an audit. We need to do an audit of finances and figure out what we're spending money on. We also need to do a program or a performance audit and figure out what have we just been paying for and just going through the motions for the last 20, 30 years, even the last 15 years, thinking that it was going to help our children academically or emotionally or, you know, and it hasn't, you know, bared out.
And when you say performance evaluation or a performance audit, I mean, that can mean different things to different people. So what's that mean to you?
That means to me really looking at programs, looking at what are we funding that cannot prove statistically that they have had a positive impact on academic achievement with our students, either character development or career preparedness. Right? If you can't statistically show us, oh, look, we implemented this and now we have this many more third graders that are now reading on grade level, right? If that's what the intention was of that program, right? Look at what the mission statement was. Look at what the goal is of that program. The government doesn't do a good job of this. The government says, oh, there's a problem. Okay, well, we'll do this program. But they never get rid of the other 12 that they were trying to fix that problem with, right? And that's where we just keep having to spend more and more and more money. And this is coming out of our pockets. This is taxpayer funding. And right now, I don't know how many of your listeners know this, almost 50% of every tax dollar that we spend on state taxes goes to K through 12 education.
Yeah. People in Chatham County are aware when they look at that Chatham County budget,
right.
A lot of it's going towards education.
It's a lot of money. And so it's a lot of responsibility. And I believe that we need to give a reckoning for how we've been spending our classroom time and our dollars to the people of North Carolina before we dare ask for them for another dime. I just believe we need to be accountable in that.
Let me ask you this: you tell us. I think you're saying you're the outsider, and your opponent sees himself as the insider. What's some of the silliest things that they have said? Oh, you know, Michelle, you can't vote for her because. And what's your response to when they say that?
Well, usually it's even Catherine was saying that I had no right to run for this because I was no right because I was just a nurse and a homeschooler. And I'm like, okay, yeah, a nurse. I mean, there's a lot that goes into being a nurse in terms of problem solving, in terms of critical. I was neurosurgical ICU. I worked in the ER. I worked in labor and delivery, and I worked in triage. I was the only nurse on one of the most remote counties of the lower 48 states, responsible for thousands of campers that came through. And I have these critical thinking skills and problem solving skills, and I think that's necessary in this race. In addition, it boggles my mind because homeschooling, I mean, what do we all want? We all want parents to take ownership of their children's education, and we want money. Well, I tell people, we're the best of both worlds. Homeschoolers pay our taxes, and you get money for your local school through it, and you never have to deal with my kids, right?
And you're doing that out of the goodness of your heart?
That's exactly right. And I will say this, too, in response to that. They state that, you know, I've never been a teacher. I don't know what's happening. I taught, actually, homeschool or high schoolers chemistry, biology, civics, and Spanish.
Now, did you homeschool all 5 of your kids?
All 5 of my kids at some point. They've been, like I said, public, private, homeschool. Right now.
Did you hold graduation ceremonies for us?
I did. Yes, absolutely. And this is the other thing. The homeschool community has a really great network. We had a beautiful graduation ceremony, and it was like 85 students. It's almost on par with a lot of these private schools graduations.
Yeah, you don't have to answer this question, but what's the most embarrassing thing that you've done for your kids that they've gone like, oh, Mom, I don't believe you did that? And again, you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to.
I'm trying to think.
Or maybe we'll reach out to Michelle's
you
kids
can
and find out
talk to my
from
kids
them.
and ask them. No, I'm very blessed because my kids are pretty proud of me, and they're thankful. I will say they were my big help because in 2015 is when I started making YouTube videos about stuff that was happening, and it was because my kids were like, Mom, we're tired of you talking about this. You need to put this on YouTube. And so they helped me to do that. But what a lot of people don't know about me, my husband and I lived in Mexico for 4 years. 3 of our 5 kids were born in Mexico City, and that's actually how I got into the political arena about 12 years ago. Yeah, talking about that.
Now, you mentioned in your talk that there's actually a 6th one because you're a grandma.
I am.
All right.
I'm what is Saturday? I'm a 10-day-old grandma.
Right. So you've had 10 days since your granddaughter or grandson?
Granddaughter, yes.
All right.
Yes.
For some reason, I've got to ask this question again. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. What's your grandma name?
Grandma.
Is it just Grandma?
It's Grandma, yeah.
Did you have a long, when I asked that question of some ladies, it's like, oh, well, I didn't know if I wanted to be Mima or Nanu or Nino, but you like Grandma?
Well, yes, because that's how I had very good relationships with all my grandparents, and it was always Grandma and Grandma. And my son's wife, my daughter-in-law's mom and dad want to be, I can't even remember what it is, but they have specific names. They're not going to be Grandma and Grandpa, so we thought we'll stick with that. But everybody knows it's whatever the first grandchild ends up being able to pronounce is what you end up becoming. So it's all for naught.
Well, you've been too busy running for office that you didn't have to give that much thought. But 10 days you've been a grandma.
10 days, yes. And they are actually in Kansas. My son is in the Army. He's a 2nd lieutenant in the Army. And they just moved up there in March. And so they're coming home in a couple weeks. So we're going to actually get to see her.
Oh, so you haven't gotten to hold her yet?
No, I haven't even held her. It's just, do you want to see a picture?
No, you can show me a picture after this. But, and the other thing, too, is when you're taking the picture of the child, don't be looking down, look up at the camera. Because all you see is the top of the forehead.
Okay, good to know.
Good to know.
You just see all my gray hair.
Well, it's okay. That's a sign of wisdom.
That's right.
What's put the biggest smile, or what's been some of the tell us what have been some of the memories of this process, because it's not an easy process. And how do you get your family to buy into it? Because it's not just a one-woman race. You need support from your family. So can you give us a little bit of information on that?
Yes, you know, I ran for school board in Cary in 2022, and I lost. But during that process, it was so wonderful because I met so many friends. And I think the thing that is most humbling to me, especially about this statewide race, is I know that there were hundreds of people that were standing at polls for me and asking people to vote for me, and I probably never even met them. And to me, that's what representative leadership is about, right? That they understand that I'm going to be their voice, right? I'm saying the things that they are like, okay, yeah, I can buy into that. And that's exciting to me because I feel like that's who we're supposed to be as a constitutional republic. We're supposed to be choosing the people that have the will of the people on their mind. I'm not going in with an agenda beyond, I want every child to reach their greatest potential. That's my agenda, right? My agenda is I want for teachers to love their job and to love why they're there. And I want them to be able to stay there and be able to provide for a family to do that, right? I want for the public school system to be the absolute best option so that once again, people can have that cohesiveness and that unity and that feeling of community that when I was growing up, that's what the schools brought to our community. And I think we need that. Again, in North Carolina, people need to know that they belong to something and that they're known and that this is a place that is safe and that families are going to work together to help their kids to reach their greatest potential.
What were your extracurricular activities in school when you were going to school?
Well, I was a swimmer. I played soccer. I played volleyball. I was on the Civitas, in Civitas. I did a lot of stuff with my church. I played the violin. I'm trying to think, what else did I do?
Did your mom make you learn to play the violin, or is that something you want to do on your own?
No, that's something I wanted to do on my own. Actually, I started playing the trumpet. And because, like, I don't know, in 5th grade, they let you, like, try out an instrument or whatever it was. It was actually maybe early, maybe 4th grade. But I will tell you, one thing that my dad did that I think has made me really great at math is when we were in the car. Now remember, this is before anybody had iPhones or videos. You only listened to the radio. That's all there was. You didn't even have CDs, everybody. But he would always make us listen to classical music when we were in the car. And classical music is it's incredibly helpful to kids to create neural pathways between the left and right hemisphere, and it's actually very helpful in math. So my dad said, you should play the violin, because I had grown up listening to, you know, classical music.
So he must have heard you play the trumpet and said, you gotta play the violin. Come on.
He did give me the option. So that's how I ended up playing. And I wanted to. I mean, that's the thing is, I feel like most kids, even today, I don't think kids have changed that much. I think they like trying new things. And I think if we can get them away from these screens, right, and allow them to kind of experience life and see, okay, I try that, maybe I don't like it, you know, but at least I tried it. I think that's what education should be about, right? It's your time to try things and determine whether you're good at them, whether you're not good at them, whether you like them, whether you don't like them. It should be opening up worlds of opportunities rather than, you know, filtering somebody into a box of who they are.
You need anything else that you need to tell the folks at Chatham County?
Chatham County, if you want to make North Carolina schools the best in the country and an example for everybody else to follow, then vote Michele Morrow for Superintendent of Public Instruction.
All right. Michele Morrow, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Take care.